Here, nothing there. So, good. Well, we're continuing this series of messages entitled Come Jesus Come. It's been a joy to work my way through Paul's epistle to the Thessalonians, the first one. It's the first time I've ever preached through that book, oddly enough. Well, there's a lot of material in the Bible, and you only have so many days to preach. So it's been a joy to do it. And this is what it all comes down to. All of the life we live, that good life which we were talking about over the last few weeks, that good life that God calls us to, aka holy life. I mean, this author says that the good life for Christians is rooted in the peace of knowing God and being known by Him. And I would add to that the idea that holiness, what is it? It's the character of God, the character of the living Jesus within us by His Spirit. It's the character of God residing in me. And you see this holiness to which we are called to live, it's beautiful, it's shareable, it's attainable, it's indispensable. And Paul writes, we should make it our ambition, shouldn't we? To live peacefully, to mind our own business. Should we just stop right there and talk about that part, or keep moving? Let's just keep moving. And to work with our own hands so that you may behave in a way which outsiders will respect. And last week we were talking about down-to-earth holiness, down-to-earth holy people. I mean, that's where we live, so we might as well be down-to-earth, living lives that are holy, and by our love, partnering with God, with acts of practical generosity, living responsibly in a manner that commands respect. And we do that by loving extravagantly, living peaceably, working productively, all the while minding our own business. And all this is good and beautiful. But if that was the end of the story, and our lives come to an end, and there's nothing more, and Jesus was not going to return, well, all this good and beautiful holiness, I guess it's better to live that way than to not. It'd be a better world, but if that's all our hope, and we live this good and beautiful life, but all the while evil proliferates, and it appears to have the upper hand sometimes, doesn't it? Sometimes it more than appears to have the upper hand. And if you get stuck in that space, then just know that God has some incredibly good news for you. And it's this, that all of your down-to-earth holiness that you are all about here and now, keep doing that, but do so in an attitude and an expectation of waiting for. Here it is. And I'm calling this message the royal arrival of Jesus. You know, there's a word in the passage that we read earlier, 1 Thessalonians 4:13-18, which in the New International Version was translated coming. But that word has got a lot more to it than just somebody coming somewhere, coming and going. It's about a royal arrival and continuing presence. And we read the passage. I'm tempted to read it again, but we're going to hit it along the way. So you've heard the words, you read the words of this passage. And now before I dive in to the words of this passage and reflect on some things that I hope will bring 1 Thessalonians 4:13-18 alive for you today, I want you to think about this. We live in a Commonwealth nation in which our figurehead head of state is definitely not the QAnon self-proclaimed, oh, there's nothing moving. Hey? Oh, there she is. There she is. Definitely not the self-proclaimed QAnon cult queen of Canada, Romana Didulo, who is currently out on bail, awaiting trial for a series of offenses. No, our titular head of state is Charles III. And there he is in all his majestic regalness. I don't know how his head can support that crown. Those things are heavy, so I'm told. Never tried one on, except the kiddie kind that you get in the toy stores. But it's been fascinating for me in recent times to read up on the founding of what we used to be called, formerly called Dominion of Canada, and the insistence of Sir John A. Macdonald that we not pursue full-on independence from Britain for reasons which likely contributed to our continuing present status as a country, separate and unique from our southern neighbors. The history is fascinating. It really is. And while some formerly Commonwealth countries have declared their full independence from Britain and are no longer part of the Commonwealth, and they no longer have Charlie III as their titular head of state, Canada has not taken that route. Now, whatever you personally think about all of that, that's the current state of affairs. And while not everyone is thrilled or happy or welcoming of royal visits, they're pretty common here, aren't they? Every time you turn around, you hear, oh, so-and-so, His Majesty, Her Majesty, this, that, and the other thing, they're going to be paying a visit. And the most recent, I believe, was when Charles III came and read the speech from the throne, which is the way we open parliaments in Canada. And he did that a few months back, which was quite a statement on many levels. So Charles arrived and he remained. Now he's gone home since. We want him to do that. Show up, do your bit, and go home. That's all good. But we're familiar with royal visits. And now what I want to do is take what is recent history and familiar to us and contrast and compare it with royal visits as they would occur in the first century. You see, when a Roman emperor made a royal visit, didn't have a live picture or video from the first century, unfortunately, but when a Roman emperor made a royal visit to a colonial capital, he would arrive, but not enter the city. He would arrive and remain outside the city gates, outside the walls. And there would be a whole lot of pageantry, the sounding of trumpets, heralds getting on their whatever counterpart to a blowhorn, bullhorn back in the day. And they would let the residents of that city know that their leader, their royal majesty, their emperor had arrived. And then the leaders and the royal and the loyal inhabitants would come outside the gates to meet the emperor, to greet him, and they would have all kinds of celebratory stuff, saying nice things about him, whether they thought it or not, and there'd be lots of food. But the culmination of all that took place outside the city gates was that at a certain point, those loyal inhabitants and their leaders they fell in behind the emperor and his entourage. And he would then lead them back into their city. And then he would remain present with them to exercise his rule, to administer justice, to dole out rewards, to execute punishments on those who were disloyal and maybe hadn't come out to meet him and greet him. And you can imagine some of these people, they're just, why is everybody leaving the city? Where are they going? We've been left behind, it seems, for something. But then they would all come back into the city with the emperor leading them. And he would begin to exercise and administer justice, doling out rewards, passing sentences on those who were not loyal. Now, the word that Paul uses frequently to refer to the royal arrival and personal continuing presence of Jesus is this Greek word parousia. Say it with me. Say it like you love it. Parousia. Oh, that's beautiful. Music to my ears. And don't worry, this will not be a long, drawn-out Greek lesson. You can tell by the letters that it's Greek, as the New Testament was written in Greek. But parousia was the word that described in the ancient world. It was a word. It was something that was common. They heard about parousias all the time, where what I described a moment ago would take place. The royal arrival and presence of an emperor. Now, there was no thought when the emperor arrived and people came out to meet and greet him and do all that pageantry stuff and sounding of trumpets and all that then the emperor would say, okay, now y'all come with me back to Rome. Right now. Forget about where you came from. We're heading to Rome. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. No thought that this emperor would do that. Rather, they would fall in line with him and follow him back into their city where he would establish and make very clear who was in charge. And it was him. Now, he would lead them back in the city and personally establish his rule among them. And likewise, this passage that we have read together today, rightly understood, is not telling you that when Jesus comes to the clouds and we meet him in the air, that he is then going to turn around and cart us off beyond the starry skies, off to heaven. That, and leaving all the rest who didn't come out, leaving them behind and wondering what in the world is happening here. That's the stuff of movies and that's the stuff of novels. But I am confident, based on the text and the meaning of that word and how it was understood in the first century, that is not biblically correct. But don't be discouraged or lose heart at my saying this, because when Jesus arrives with his holy angels and holy humans, those holy humans will be reunited with their bodies as he raises their bodies and reunites them with those spirits that have been with him for however long. And those of us who are alive when this happens will be instantly transformed into his resurrection likeness. And he will, as we come out to meet and greet him, to all of that pageantry, the shout, the trumpet, the whole thing, he will lead us where? Back down to earth. That's where. An earth that he is making and going to make absolutely new. That's our blessed hope. That is what we are patiently awaiting. That is what will bring us comfort in our grief and loss in this present time. Now, let's dive in. First thing about this royal arrival of Jesus is that it is the certain hope and the certain expectation of Christians, dead and alive. You're one of those two right now. There are no other options. You're either dead or you're alive. And if you're a follower of Jesus, or we're a follower of Jesus, then this royal arrival, it's your certain hope. It's your certain expectation. What does Paul say? Now concerning those who have fallen asleep. Isn't that a nice way to think about death? And it's not just a nice sentimental way, it's actually the way it is. But he says, we do not want you to remain in ignorance about them. We do not want you to have the kind of grief that other people do. People who don't have any hope. I think we'd all agree that there is such an overwhelming abundance of grief in this world right now. Some of it is being felt in this room, and so much of which is the result of hell-inspired human evil. The Thessalonian believers were no strangers to this, but they simply didn't know what would happen in the case of their loved ones who had died, aka had fallen asleep, a much more comforting and true understanding of the death of one of God's people. How do we as Christians grieve? How do we do that? You've probably been to funerals where there is no interest, maybe no awareness of Jesus and all that he's done. Or if there is an awareness, it's considered nothing more than, at best, a fairy tale. We know differently. So how do we as Christians grieve? Is there any hope that is not mere wishful thinking? Oh, you know there is. This past week, there was a funeral. It was last Sunday. Charlie Kirk. He's the one for whom the football stadium in Phoenix, which will hold 100,000 for a football game. There was about 100,000 there in that stadium last Sunday afternoon, or morning, as it was in Phoenix with the 3-hour time gap. And there were 20,000 more in an adjacent arena receiving live feed, and there were bazillions more watching it live on YouTube or some other streaming service. And the worship was led by people whose songs we sing: Brandon Lake, Chris Tomlin, Phil Wickham, Cody Carnes, Carrie Job. Holy Forever. We know that one. What was that other Wickham one? That Phil Wickham, we sing his songs. Hymn of Heaven. Carrie Job, The Blessing. We sang it on Jen's last Sunday. Well, they led it, and I just sat there and just loving it as they led us, the boys and Jen. But apparently that was Charlie's favorite song. And there were 5+ hours. Beth and I actually watched the whole thing. It was a beautiful day outside. I don't like being down in my basement it's not quite a dungeon, but I like to be upstairs or outside enjoying the bright sunshine when it's available. We were down in the basement because that's the TV that can get YouTube. 5+ hours of tributes, most of which honored Charlie and Erica Kirk and their Lord. Unfortunately, there were some tributes, some speeches that got inappropriately political. I'll say no more about that. But whatever you think of the politics of this thing, Erica Kirk, Charlie's widow, she spoke. And you can see on her face the sadness, the sorrow, the loss. If anybody has a right to be bitter and angry and out for blood, would it not be this lady? But you know what she did when she spoke? Do you know what she did? She, in the most heartfelt, genuine manner, forgave her husband's assassin. I'm quite sure there wasn't a dry eye in that stadium or on couches like our couch in the basement. Not a dry eye. Why would she do that? Why would she forgive her husband's assassin? She linked it clearly and eloquently to what Jesus did on the cross when he forgave his assassins. She did it because she knew and knows what it is to grieve, yes, really grieve, as one in whom the hope of Christ, the hope of this passage, lives large. It moved people who would totally disagree with the whole, what they stood for. It brought Jimmy Kimmel to tears as he said, "That's Christianity. That's what it is right there." Erica Kirk has shown us in real time what Paul wrote for all time. Because Paul goes on, you see, if we believe that Jesus died and rose, that's the way God will also, through Jesus, bring with him those who have fallen asleep. Those who have fallen asleep in Jesus are safe in the arms of Jesus. Do you know that? They are at rest in heaven with him now, in that place that he prepared for them. In John 14, when Jesus talks about going to prepare a place for us, the language that he used, the word he used, points to that place as being like an inn, like an Airbnb that is bought and paid for in heaven. But we go to those places not as our final destination. So what is the final destination from which we emerge from that place of rest? It's the new heaven and new earth that comes together when Jesus hands over his kingdom to the Father, and God will be all in all. That's how it works. And Jesus, in a way that we cannot entirely get our minds around, will bring his resting saints. Come on, guys. It's on. It's on. My royal arrival is on. Come on. Let's go. And he'll bring these resting saints along with his holy angels. He will bring them with him to the clouds as he begins this royal arrival. And now concerning this arrival, this parousia, There is nothing in the passage which suggests that this would be secret, invisible, or silent. That's the working theory out there with some, but there's nothing in the passage which can sustain that. Therefore, the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a shouted order, with the voice of an archangel, the sound of God's trumpet. Now, does any of that seem secret, invisible, or silent to you? The only way you arrive at that is if you superimpose on the passage ideas that the verses simply can't support or sustain. This is loud. This is visible. This is anything but secret or silent. Scripture says every eye will see him, every ear will hear his command and the sound of the angelic trumpet. And now that he's got our attention with all that, what next? Oh, it's good. It's good. It's really good. It's the best. The certain hope and expectation of all of us, dead or alive, will bring about the resurrection of those who have died and who are asleep in the presence of Jesus. I don't necessarily mean literally, because I think there's good evidence that we're well aware. Well, I wouldn't know because I haven't been there yet. But he'll bring those spirits of those who have died in whatever their reality is, and as he brings them to the clouds along with his holy angels, their bodies will be raised. And we who are alive and remain will be transformed instantaneously. Let me explain, he says. This is the word of the Lord. I'm not making any of this up. I didn't read it somewhere and paraphrase it. No, this is the Lord's word. We who are alive, who remain until the Lord is present, will not find ourselves ahead of those who have fallen asleep. Those who we have mourned will actually be granted the first stage of what God has in store for his Son's faithful dead and perhaps martyred. However they fell asleep, the Messiah is dead. We'll rise first. Look out, graveyards. Yeah, I can just imagine the scene. Not grave vandalism, but it'll certainly make the graveyard unnecessary. The Messiah is dead. We'll rise first. Then we who are alive, who are left, will be snatched up with them among the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And in this way we shall always be with the Lord. Here's your rapture. Here it is. But it's anything but secret, invisible, or silent. Now, of course, unlike those who would come out, walk out of their cities, go to meet and greet and celebrate the arrival of the emperor, who would come for his royal arrival, where he would then turn around, come into the city and set up some rule. Of course, we on our own have no way to meet the Lord in the air. They haven't developed jetpacks that can quite do the job. Wouldn't work anyway. We have no ability to meet and greet him after the manner of this royal arrival, that the Thessalonians, as they hear this word, they can say, that's how it's going to be. And what the Lord does is gives us a turbo assist. I don't know about you, I can't fly. But if you want to talk about flying away, that'll be where we fly away to meet him. He and not Red Bull is what gives us wings. And so we shall ever and always be with the Lord. Where? Where? The royal arrival of Jesus will quite literally be down to earth. Down to earth. I'm saying quite literally. Because this way of parousia, the way of ancient royal arrivals and ongoing never-ending presence, the royal arrival and presence of Jesus will be to come straight down to where we've been, taking us in his train. He's returning to earth, not gathering us and flying us off to heaven. No, he's coming to earth with us in his entourage. And this earth to which he is returning is where he will right every wrong. This is where he'll put everything right. This is where the faithful we rewarded. This is where the execution of righteous justice that the Father has put into his hands and his authority will be enacted. In this way, we will always be the Lord. Here is where he will judge every manifestation of evil and its source. The devil and his beasts of economic, political, social oppression that will be shown up as the miserable, pitiful creatures that they are, and they will be sent into eternal judgment. Here is where we will forever be with him. Not somewhere we fly off to beyond the starry sky. Might work in an old gospel song, but here is where he is coming. Down to earth, we joining him. Here is where he establishes that reign. Here is where the new heaven and new earth will be created. This is our hope and this is our comfort. Last point. The royal arrival of Jesus is the comfort we all need till he comes. It's the comfort we all need till he comes. So comfort each other with these words. Now, Paul has a lot more to say about this in the next chapter and in the second letter. But for now, you and I are able to hold on to comfort that's stronger than death. That's the royal arrival of Jesus, folks, as I read it in this passage. Taking as my cue the meaning of the words and, quite frankly, taking literally what is there. This is comfort. This is our hope. And so, think again about what I read from Erica Kirk, those parallel tracks that we're living on, the track of sorrow, the track of joy. But you and I, knowing what we know, are able to look into the distance, however far that distance is, because he can come anytime he wants to. And when the Father says go, game on. Game on. This is your hope. This is it. And so we say, let everything, let the sorrow fall away, let the joy be what is left. And we say, even so, come, Lord Jesus. Are you ready? Or are you sleeping at the switch? Next week's message is entitled, Are You Awake? Are you awake? We'll dive into that when we hit chapter 5, where Paul is all about, hey, wake up, people. Wake up. There's some things you need to know, and there's some ways you need to live as fully awake people. But for right now, worship team, let's wrap this up.